And we're the week before RecFest, which we're eagerly anticipating. We've got some pretty significant product updates and product launches. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about one element of our product update today. But actually, before we do that, we're going to frame what is a really, really important issue and challenge right now when we think about recruitment, and that is the rise of fake talent. That is a challenge which has existed for some time, actually is now being accelerated as we look at new technology. So we'll come to that in just a moment. But before we do, obviously myself and Frankie are probably familiar with if you've joined these shows before, but we've got a guest with us today in Denise. So Denise, we'd love for you to do an introduction, your background, where you're working at the moment.
Thanks, Sam. I thought you were going to do that. I was waiting for this monumental event. I have been in recruitment for many years. I stumbled into it when I was in my 20s. I'm not sure anybody ever says I want to be a recruiter. Most of us stumble into it. So I did in my 20s and steadily rose through the ranks until I was an executive leader of probably the largest brand in South Africa, and did a lot with them in terms of doing global talent acquisition. Decided in my later years to move into building entrepreneurs, because so many small businesses were asking us, what can I do? How can I do it? Because a lot of your business goes around people, strangely. And so I did that for a while and worked with some very dynamic people building entrepreneurship in South Africa. And I'm now in the States and working for a really great technology company that works on insider threat programs, specifically for federal agencies at the moment. And so this kind of thing is a huge risk for us specifically. So here I am.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think, the challenge becomes so much more pronounced in high security or highly sensitive operations, but there's certainly a great degree of operational risk, both at a team, but also at an organizational level. And this has been something which has been true for a long time. Misrepresentation on people's CVs or resumes has existed. People maybe overinflate their skills or abilities, or maybe slightly misrepresent exactly what their role was in a previous organization. But now it's become kind of operationalized through the advent of AI, and it's so easy for people to do this mass. And I suppose when you're thinking about it from a day-to-day perspective, like what have you seen that tells you that maybe this is getting worse than it was before? This is like moving beyond misrepresentation to something a little bit more pronounced.
So I think the first thing is that typically engineering recruitment specifically has always been low volume, high touch. And suddenly I find myself being high volume, and that low touch has it's suddenly become low touch because you're spending so much time at the top of your funnel. And that is very different for me. And so it feels to me like I'm absolutely swimming in porridge. That's the first thing for me, is that what I'm suddenly spending my time on in comparison to what I always have. There are other things like the technical engineering is always roundish peg in roundish holes. You never get perfect fits. You're always saying to your hiring managers, what can we sacrifice? What are your top priorities? What are the things you can't live without? And all these other wish lists, those didn't even come into the picture. And suddenly you're getting resume after resume after resume with perfect fits that just fit your job perfectly. And I think those are the other thing that's a little bit scary for me, to be honest, is I've spent years training consultants not to trust their gut, because you want to be collecting data. And so you tell them, hold on to your judgment. And now I find I'm developing a spidey sense of, I think this is fake. I think this is fake. I think this is a bogus candidate. And so that's concerning for me, because at the same time, you want to stay in that objective space, and yet you can't, because there's just this high volume of fake resumes and people.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's it. Like the tsunami of real looking resumes is definitely one of the biggest operational challenges in recruitment right now. It's like genuine waves that just can't be managed on that one-to-one basis, and all of them feel very similar. All of them feel like they fit the mold. And then we are seeing increasing stories of like candidates that just don't even exist. And on one side, you've got tooling that's trying to match against this and thinking, okay, we've got 3,000 applicants for this position. How do we make sure we're building a short list? It's largely based on keywords. It's largely tied to the job description. But then the tools that candidates are using are largely based on keywords and largely based on the job description. And it ends up being this firefight or this red team versus blue team setup where both sides are kind of accelerating what they're doing in order to gain the system. And with good reason, because there are higher volumes of candidates available in the market. It is a more competitive market for the right positions, and people need to be in employment. And as more people use generative AI in order to gain interviews at organizations, it just compounds the issue because it takes 300 to get to that point where you're not going to manually craft 300 applications. You're going to use some level of automation to help you. And actually, there's a good argument to say that leveraging large language models to improve the construction of your resume is a good thing at a base level, as long as it's not over indexing or maybe misrepresenting skills. So it's a really, really fine balance. And then you mentioned that you've got like a spidey sense. What are some of the things that you're looking out for when you're looking at that?
So at the top of the funnel, LinkedIn is my first go-to. So first of all, finding out, are they on LinkedIn? Secondly, how long have they been on LinkedIn? If you've got somebody that's got 16 years of experience and they suddenly only went onto LinkedIn last month, high probability that they are. LinkedIn seems to be doing a great job because many of them are that 404 page doesn't exist. And so they're doing a good job of trying to do a good job of getting those off almost as soon as they get on. The other thing is, I think that once you get into the interview, if I see the Golden Gate Bridge, that's the first time I kind of hold my breath and I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. The face seems to be a little bit disconnected from the rest of the body. Sometimes there's no white in the eyes. So, by that time you're already, but just on resumes, which is obviously where you want to keep that screening out on that level, looking to doing some research, seeing where did they work, how long did they work. Some of the things that for me are concerning, well, are signs, is if they've been at a company for 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, they seem to have these like perfect resumes. And that's not the reality, certainly in the United States. There are people that stay for long periods, but they're not that magical. I worked here for 4 years and then 5 years and then 8 years and then 6 years. Those are good signs for me. But the thing is that you can't just use one thing to say, oh, I think this is fake. You've got to keep going until you find enough to say that I know this is fake, because otherwise you're discriminating and you could be losing a good candidate.
And actually, I'm just going to throw this up into here, and Frankie, Denise, would be great to get both of your views on this, because this is from the candidate side. We're talking about this very much from the employer side right now. And here's a candidate that's literally signed in and said that they're seeing fake postings, they're seeing predatory emails, texts, and messages to harvest data, which I think is a really, really good frame. So I don't know who wants to jump in first on what the candidates should feel about this process where they're feeling that there's maybe fake job postings on the other side.
You go, Frankie.
I wasn't sure if you're really tiny on my screen today, so I couldn't see if you were going to talk. If you can keep it up, Sam, that would be great. I mean, it really flips it on its head. And I think this still speaks to us at hackajob because we appeal to both sides of the marketplace. As much as we're seeing the challenges in the market in fake profiles and fake candidates and deepfake interviews, for example, it is worth noting that candidates might be experiencing similar things. I'd like to understand more around the kind of types of messages, but in terms of the assumption around data harvesting, we were just talking about this before we jumped onto the live or went live. But this is actually a problem. We almost want any job seekers in the market to kind of understand this wider problem that talent acquisition teams are facing, because actually a lot of the time, if they're not data harvesting, they do just need to know that you are who you say you are. And actually being able to show that as part of your application or as part of any interview process will only kind of benefit you in that hiring process. So any ID or any verification that you can do at those earlier stages, is going to benefit you. I'd like to see the context, because you never know, there might be some data harvesting going on, but certainly not from TA teams or anybody asking you for that. If you've applied for a job, I would see it as something that's going to benefit you if you are who you say you are.
And I think what we'll do is maybe come to this towards the end when we show what we've kind of brought to the table. But I just thought it was really interesting as we covered that literally before we sat down. And so, one of the things that you were talking about there, Denise, was like top of the funnel, you're getting those applications in and you're understanding that, hey, maybe this doesn't look like it's right. And then maybe once you're in the process, you highlighted one of those examples where people are potentially creating generated versions of themselves to conduct the interview. We've seen kind of horror stories of people having interviews where there's like voice modulation going on, or there's like delays and things. So let's talk about like the interview process and things that you're looking for there. And then maybe we can step beyond that as well. But yeah, interview process, what are you looking for?
So Sam, it's interesting. I think we're going to cover this, but every time you kind of find something and a way to identify, blow me down, they will know it soon and they will change it. So that's the thing. You've got to be constantly adapting to the whole process. Just this week, I spoke to some people who were not using the typical, they are real people, but their computer was talking to me. And the only way I found that out was that I asked an unusual question. And if I'm going to give any advice today, it's find unusual questions to pop into the process, because the AI has put together what they know already and how we ask, and we all seem to have the same process. And so they've put this slick response back. So if you ask something really unusual, and the lady sat there with her mouth closed, but her computer continued to talk. So I said to her, "Is your computer talking to me?" And she just looked at me, she stared at me, and then the lady on the computer carried on saying, "No, no, no, it's me." And then the lady was sitting with her mouth closed. So the thing is, it changes, but for a lot of in the interview, and that's why I try and ask the unusual questions right up front. And some of the things that I ask, and we'll probably get into more of this, are things like we are going to do an on-site interview, and they used to say, "Oh no, I can't do that." Now they say, "Okay, I'll come." And I'm not sure what they do at the last step when you're actually booking them a flight. But then the other thing is, I've asked silly questions like, tell me the closest airport to you so that I can start prepping for that. And then we get some unusual answers. A lot of them are just like, and then they switch themselves off, computer goes dead. And so it just depends. But definitely the feels so obvious now. I saw somebody yesterday who has been working on, he interviewed some of them and he had the screens up. And I was like, how did I think that this wasn't fake? They all look so fake. So if you get one of those YouTube videos which shows you what it looks like, you'll see exactly the oddness of it all.
And this is insane, by the way. And I think if anyone else in the chat wants to kind of post any examples which they've got, like people genuinely using voice modulators, like using large language models in the background to run an interview process, is really dangerous. And obviously you're catching this out, and it's really crucial that you do. What do you think when you're then going to the next stage of the process? What's the risk for TA professionals? Somebody passes that stage, you're not spotting that, they're getting further into the kind of business process. What do you think there?
Yeah, so obviously one of the things that I would suggest for the next step to stop that is to have your partners work with you. And so if they do get through to the next phase, we have partners that will look for unethical behavior in the assessments. Although, to be honest, they've got so good at that a lot of them actually are scoring the highest on our assessments. So it just means that you've got to have many, many points to try and weed out the bogus candidates. Does that answer your question, Sam?
Yeah. And I think, this is, I saw a Gartner report and they said by 2028, 1 in 4 candidates in process might be fake, and have agents applying on your behalf and wait until you get to the final interview and then maybe drop into that scenario. And then the kind of points you're raising around the airport, I can see Bilal has commented and Adebayo has doubled down on that comment as well, around looking for people further across the globe and how potentially location becomes more of a challenge. And those examples you've given around airports, what's your closest airport, the fact that we're having to bring that into the process, crazy, but actually those really simple questions can help to unpick that and not erode talent acquisition's position within the business, particularly when you're working in a secure, sensitive area like you are. Goes to a hiring manager, they see a bad actor at play, that erodes trust. So it goes beyond that point. There's a really well covered story in a big crypto company, and they put a sting operation in because they had so many candidates from North Korea specifically posing as US citizens for remote jobs, that they had to put fake interviews into the process to catch people out in order to stop IP drifting away. And that's really where it becomes super dangerous. So yeah, it kind of doubles down and goes back to that point. And then you spoke about partners, which is like a natural segue for us. And important that we've got Frankie here. So, yeah, Denise, you were one of a few customers that kind of cited this challenge, and then we thought about how we would approach it here on our side. So Frankie, why don't you share? This is one of many product updates that we've got coming. Well, this one's live.
So before she does, I just want to add
Go
this.
for it.
So it's probably between, I don't know, 18 to 20 months ago that I started experiencing this, or maybe I even just clicked that it was happening. And I went to providers that we had at the time. And honestly, it was a shame, but they just said, oh, you're the only person that's ever complained about this. And I really was so felt off my game. How is it that this feels so, and it was so weird that I did think I was a little bit cray-cray at the time, and really, when it started happening, we ramped up sort of last year, just after we joined hackajob. And when I did go and say, listen, I think there's something funny happening, I was blown away that hackajob jumped in there with us and said, tell us what it is, show us what it is, and really, really started working with us from the get-go. And when I said it's ramping up, it's getting real, you were there. And so honestly, I can't say enough about how important it is for you to have partners that don't gaslight you and say you're the only person, and just get on board with you. So the floor is yours, Frankie.
To be honest, that was an even better segue. So I can only thank you. But you are right. Obviously, we heard it from yourself. This is a widespread, industry challenge. We were hearing it from other customers in terms of, their kind of wider hiring processing, they're experiencing the same problems, newer customers coming on board. So we knew this was a challenge, across the board of customers facing elsewhere. And while this isn't what we didn't see this as a widespread issue on hackajob, we knew that this is a problem that customers are facing. And so we wanted to give them that kind of extra layer of reassurance. And at hackajob, I'm sure a few people will know this, but as a bit of history, like we've always believed that trust starts with like that first party candidate data. So ever since hackajob began, candidates sign up to hackajob, they qualify their kind of technical skills, experience, their preferences, locations, salary preferences, types of jobs they want to work for, right to work, security clearance. There's a bunch of stuff that they will kind of share as first party data when they sign up to hackajob and when their profile goes live on hackajob. And then also once their profile is live and they're receiving interview requests, candidates have always received kind of in-platform prompts just asking them to confirm employer requirements again, things like visa status or security clearance, if there's kind of that kind of extra layer of security for certain roles, which we do have a lot of on hackajob. And so this level of kind of depth of data means on hackajob, the candidates were already candidate profiles were already quite rich, already a little bit more reliable than you would see in terms of just your general, your kind of mass applications that you might be getting elsewhere. As I said, we kind of wanted to give that extra added layer of reassurance. And so where we were kind of hearing this from most was employers like yourself, Denise, hiring remote or hybrid talent, companies just with remote hiring processes in general. And then also you've mentioned it, but like at the latter stages or mid stages of the hiring process as well, hiring managers, and talent teams, they want that kind of confidence from that first interaction. And so what we kind of wanted the outcomes for customers to be was that one, increased trust, again, in remote hiring, not second guessing that the person behind the profile is real or not all the time, helping you kind of just make those decisions faster without kind of having to cross track and, have that kind of checklist of things that you're looking for. With one, we've got that data already, and two, we can add in this layer of ID verification and just give you kind of credibility back with hiring teams and kind of reduce risk. So now when companies want to kind of have that reassurance on hackajob, you can ask candidates to complete ID verification with that kind of first initial outreach and interview request on the platform. And this has been live now for, oh gosh, you were the first, Denise, to start using it, but not long, just over a week, and we've already seen 40% of candidates progress have completed that ID verification in just that amount of time of live candidates. So the uptake has been brilliant, and we're only starting to see that increase, as more and more companies are using it. And the actual time to complete that ID verification is not long at all between candidates actually accepting the interview request, completing that ID verification, and then going ahead and progressing to that first round of interview. Users and customers like yourself will have an interview booked in their diary with somebody that has completed their ID verification, and that just kind of gives a bit of reassurance from both sides that everyone is who they say they are. And then once the candidate has completed the verification, they're kind of stamped with a verified badge in their profile, so you can see that when you're looking at new candidates that you might have matched with as well that might have completed that. So it's going well, and we're really proud to kind of be helping customers with this as well.
Yeah, and I think as a segue from this, like we talked about this in the pre-game, and I think Adonis has kind of posed this question. There's no hope for anyone looking for a job with real experience. And I think there definitely is a real challenge, right? If you are a job seeker right now, and we talked about this before, like the personal information which you're going to start to have to provide as part of interview processes or before interview processes is going to be a big distinguishing factor. When you're thinking about stack ranking candidates, you've got 300 resumes for a position, and maybe you've got a tool on the other side that's saying, hey, these 10 are the top 10. And then as a recruiter, you go through the 10 and 4 of those are not right. If there were 10 candidates and one of those candidates was also verified, you feel that greater degree of confidence and verification. It's like that cross-checking, which you're doing manually at the moment, at least when you're going and checking on LinkedIn. The reason why we do that on LinkedIn is because it's trusted and it's a marketplace, and it's similar to what we've set up with hackajob. And I think that would be advice to job seekers is, how can you build networks? How can you make sure that you're connecting with people on a human level outside of your job search and be visible on social rather than just appearing at the point at which you're searching for a job? And then probably accept the fact that in the coming weeks, months, years, probably not just for recruitment purposes, there's going to be an increasing reliance on external verification for all forms of media, whether that's human beings applying for a position or video content that's created or imagery that's created, because it's so easy now for anybody to create a lifelike version of somebody doing something, whether that's applying for a job, being interviewed in the street, providing information at a press conference, outside of a courtroom. It can be in any scenario, right? So yeah, I think it's like an increasing part of the journey for job seekers to be on marketplaces, to have verified profiles, to connect with people as people, so that trust is there, because it's going to be the most important commodity now in recruitment. Denise, we've got a question specifically for you, so I'll throw it up here. Bilal's been super active throughout the chat, so thanks for joining us, Bilal.
Sure. So before I answer Bilal, I just want to say one thing about Frankie's thing. So the way that the verification works on hackajob now is literally to take a selfie of yourself and then to put your government issued ID next to yourself and take another photo. Is that right, Frankie?
That is correct.
All of that feels quite invasive for me. It feels like, what? I've barely got to know you and now you're putting a ring on my finger. I wait a bit, So I think getting comfortable with giving your personal identification to LinkedIn and to hackajob, for instance, is going to be a mind shift for people. But it is the way that you're going to percolate to the top of the talent, thinking that you've got no hope. I think working with all the checks and balances we're putting into place will give you that. So do you know what? I was just going to add to that today, and again to the same comment, but again, it's on hackajob, you are completing a single profile as well. So that profile is not going to be catered to
to different job roles in terms of what candidates are applying for. And then when candidates do go to complete the ID verification, and yes, it is a case of there's kind of a live photo, upload some government issued documents. It's all a very, very quick process. We do make that very clear on the platform, what the benefits are, and why companies are asking for this as well. And I think that's why the uptake has been so high, and why candidates are so willing to do it, because I think once you actually understand what, the reason for doing it, and how it's going to benefit you as a candidate, it does kind of speed the process up and makes the process fairer for both sides.
Yeah, and I think I've seen a lot of people sign up to this event, particularly who are working with candidates that require clearance for the positions that are working. They're working in IP sensitive roles or IP sensitive hiring. And in those instances, candidates are more attuned to being asked for significant amounts of their personal information, normally later down the process. And so should be an easier part at the top of the funnel to kind of negate. But for most platforms, that isn't the case. And for your direct applications, for sure, that's not going to be the case, because it's about creating the least amount of friction to generate the most applications, because that is what the application models are driven on. And that's the commercial model that they operate under currently. So yeah, definitely a big challenge there. I want to go to Bilal's question. And then we've got a couple of really cathartic comments as well from others that have been chasing candidates down rabbit holes. But Bilal, Bilal's question first, Denise, for you.
Bilal, yeah. So Bilal, the kind of jobs that I fill, we have quite a boutique-y sort of skill tech stack. And so to be honest, when I used to look, I would maybe get 3 or 4 profiles. Even if I put it out there, I had knockout questions. Have you got this specific skill? And now I'm getting dozens, hundreds of people that say, yeah, I've got that. And in their resume, it says that they did this particular skill. So the benchmarks, the location, things like that, obviously I look for some remote on-site. On-site doesn't even seem to matter sometimes. People will still say, yeah, I live in California. And then when I get to talking to them, they say, well, I'm just traveling at the moment. And so it goes. The pay range, one of the spidey things for me with pay range is that they often actually are lower than the marketplace that they put into their required salary in hackajob, for instance. Or if I've got a knockout question around, does this salary range suit you? They'll say yes, regardless, of what it is. So I honestly mean that they are actually building their resumes specifically for your job description. And so that's how you get the flood. Does that make sense, Bilal?
Yeah, it certainly does for me. And one thing, which was a great example yesterday, I was speaking to a customer that hires for Genesis Cloud engineers. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Genesis Cloud, but it's a particularly niche element of technical work within telephony. And they were receiving more applicants than there were candidates available with that skill. There's a great indication of how pronounced the issue is. There's loads and loads of cathartic stuff here of people facing this problem day to day. So it definitely feels like something that's super topical. There's a question here which I'm going to take first, but feel free to jump in afterwards from Karen, just because I saw it first. And what bias risks are being introduced with photo verification? I want to be really, really clear up front with how photo verification works on hackajob. You are matching with a candidate objectively first. You are then deciding which candidate to progress with. The candidate gets a notification to say, hey, Denise, Agility would love to connect with you about this position. Before they move forward, can you provide identity verification? That is the critical component. So no decisions are being made ahead of this. This is once you've made the decision as a recruiter, you want to progress somebody forwards. That is how it works, because hackajob is a reverse marketplace where you are inviting people to interview or inviting people to apply. I can definitely see the challenge, Karen, if this was a case within a CV of having that verification, but you probably wouldn't issue it in that way with the photo verification. You don't get that picture alongside the ID as part of the process. Obviously, that information is protected. You get the stamp from us that says this candidate profile is verified. So hopefully that's super clear. Let me know if it's not, but I think it's a really important thing to raise. So thank you for the for the comment there. We've run almost exactly to time, which is always awesome. If you are interested in looking at our verified candidate feature and you're currently facing this challenge right now of far too many applications, eroding trust in the quality of the applications or the relevance or whether these candidates are even real, then definitely, drop us a note. You can click yes at the end of this and you can sign up for a 30-day free trial of hackajob, and you can engage with first-party data candidates that you're objectively matching against, that you can then verify those candidates are exactly who they say they are before they enter into your process, and stop you having to ask questions like what's your nearest airport, cross-checking every candidate, and then entering an interview environment where somebody's using a voice modulator in order to pass the interview process. And yeah, obviously there's a lot of other very well flagged stories in this space already of things which have gone dramatically wrong in other organizations, not the one in today. But yeah, thank you very much, Denise, for joining. That's awesome. Thank you, Frankie, for that wonderful rundown as ever of new product releases. It's been fantastic having everyone here. Let's keep this conversation going. Truly topical. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you so much.